I had the pleasure, honor, really, to deliver a workshop at Microsoft Build a couple of weeks ago. And in case you missed it, I have some good news, which is that it's open source and everybody can do these hands-on labs and learn the material from this workshop. So it was called Build Microsoft Teams Apps Leveraging Existing Software Investments. And that's kind of been a theme with App Camp all along, is just the idea of reusing your existing investments. But the strategy in the initial set of labs, which are still there and still quite valid, was to take an existing website and transform that into a Teams application. And as a result, because the idea was that you might use any tooling on the planet to build your website, what the idea was that we wouldn't use any tooling, any special tooling at all. Instead, we would provide an experience that would really help people to understand how to build their own or adapt what they had. The approach here is a little different. Everybody's got web services, and they've been extremely popular. We've had this service-oriented architecture thing going on for decades now. So the approach here is a little different. It's to say, well, your existing app is probably got a web service, whether that's public app on the internet, or maybe it's a private app inside your enterprise. There's almost always some kind of a web services layer. So the strategy then is to build a really simple Teams app with Teams Toolkit, which makes the development process much simpler, and then just use that to sort of wrap around or cover over your web service and deliver that value into Teams. So whether it's, and you'll actually get to do sort of a simulated enterprise web service, a public web service, and a Microsoft Graph. So you'll get to kind of do all these things. Now the strategy is actually to focus on message extensions, which is just one of the many ways that Teams apps can work. So this diagram kind of shows that your message extensions can run when you're composing your message, when you're acting on an existing message, or even in the command bar up at the top. And you'll actually get to build all of these things if you do the labs. And of course, I'm going to demo the whole thing for you in a minute. So the way this works, just a little bit of a briefing here, is just that the message extensions, you need real-time communication from Teams, where somebody maybe clicked a menu item, and you need to immediately get to your app and wake that app up. And it's got to be secure, and it's got to be fast and real-time. So for that reason, they use the bot framework, which is already great at delivering real-time secure messages. And you use the Teams channel for your users using Teams to call your app, which then turns around and calls the web service. And we'll look at some of the code for this. The cool thing is that now we can even accommodate more users by adding the new Microsoft 365 channel, which currently allows Microsoft Outlook to also participate. One can only imagine that they didn't call it the Outlook channel. Maybe they have some further plans for this in the future. Not sure even what client that would be. Maybe it's just really long term, but it's cool that they're sort of aggregating it, the whole idea of it across Microsoft 365. So let me show you what you can build with these labs, and then as time allows, I will show you some of the code. I guess first here is the, and I'll put the URL into the chat. It's aka.ms/appcampnew. The old URL still works, but this will bring you right to the new labs. And you'll see there's 6 labs. The very first one, you're going to create an app with the Teams Toolkit that is kind of like the hello world of message extensions. And then we're going to allow you to integrate an enterprise web service with that. And then we'll add something called Link on Furling, which I'll show you in a minute. It's pretty cool. And then this actually, by the way, covers every kind of message extension. So that's kind of unusual to have all of them in one place, because the next thing will be an action message extension with OpenAI. So now this is showing you how to call an API on the internet, which is the OpenAI, the Azure OpenAI service. And then it'll show you also in Lab 5 how to do single sign-on and call the Microsoft Graph, which is a secured web service with single sign-on. And then finally, you run it in Outlook. So those are all the steps, and everything is incredibly detailed, step by step, starting with getting your tenant and setting everything up. So you should be able to just follow these instructions. And then if you have any feedback or questions, you can click here to go to the repo. And we're actually using the issues in here to orchestrate that stuff, as well as this is where your finished solution files are. So without further ado, let me just pop in and show you the finished solution. So I'm going to start with an instance that I have deployed to Azure. One of the great things about Teams Toolkit is that it makes it really easy when you've got your app working to just click a button and off we go to Azure. So I'm here talking to my fake colleagues, Megan and Nestor. They're some of the fictitious users you might have in your tenant as well, right, at this point, because they come with the free subscription. And I'm just going to come in here and go to the Northwind Suppliers app and start typing the name of a supplier. And what will happen is it's going to go out and query the Northwind service. So this is the simulated enterprise service. We didn't want you to have to set up a whole web service just for the lab. And pull in some data, and then we can come in here and click on one of these, and it will make a nice little adaptive card for us that we can use and share with our teammates. So there's another lab in the original app camp that shows you how to put input fields on this adaptive card and actually accept updates from the user who receives it. We didn't really take it that far. Actually, I would love to get some kind of feedback on where we should go with this, because this was could just be the first step of doing all kinds of other things. But anyway, so you'll learn in this exercise kind of how to consume a web service, expose it in a search message extension, and build an adaptive card that you can then share in Teams and Outlook. I'm going to do these a little bit out of order. The next one that I'll show is actually Lab 5, which is the single sign-on with the graph. So if I come into my contacts list, actually let me just pop in here and show you. I need to be in Outlook for a future part here anyway. And I'll just kind of go to the little people icon here and show you my personal contacts. So the fake business scenario here is that we're Northwind and we're managing our suppliers. And it's perfectly reasonable that I would be building a relationship with a new supplier like AdventureWorks or ADatum, and I would have their data in my personal contacts list. So what if I want to share that in Teams? Do I want to copy and paste? No, I don't want to copy and paste. I want to click here, come right into here, do a search in my contacts, type a letter or two from the name, and without signing in again, nothing up my sleeve, right? It's going to actually go and use single sign-on to get the necessary Azure AD token to get my contacts, enumerate all the ones that have A in them, and then I can go ahead and insert one of these into the conversation. Very simple. Now, we could have put in another adaptive card here, but basically the idea is let's not repeat the same sort of work over and over again. So we're just using a really simple card here. But the point is you've got all that data now from the Microsoft Graph that users can now bring into a conversation and share with one another very freely. The next one shows what's called an action message extension. And these don't get as much love as I think they deserve. To run this, I'll come in and I'll click this button, generate message. And in this case, we're going to call Azure OpenAI to generate a message. Now there's actually a variation in this lab if you prefer to use the OpenAI public service, which is not from Microsoft, right? OpenAI is a different company. You can use that too, and there's just some different instructions for that. But we encourage you, if you can get access to an Azure subscription, to set this up yourself and have a lot more control over the environment. Also, any information that gets sent in is kind of inside of your Azure tenant and not in a public shared web service where they might be training the web service based on your business data, which, it depends on your business, how big of a deal that is. So here we've got a prompt and it just says, please generate a message. And we're getting kind of a generic message. So let's say to welcome the PNP community, and I can click generate again. And what's actually happening is that it's going to, it calls the web service, obviously, but then it generates an adaptive card each time, which is getting displayed. So I'm actually interacting with an adaptive card in here. And so you can iterate with this as many times as you want, or the user can, and then finally send that message in. Now, another thing that I think is a really cool capability that not everyone knows about is the ability to act on a message. So here, Megan has sent in a message. Do you want to go out to lunch today? And rather than kind of copying and pasting and things like that, you'll get to build an AI reply capability, which will go and reach in, take her message, take the original message that I pointed to, and either generate an agreeable response, maybe disagreement. I can't go to lunch today, but I'm going to be real polite and business about it. I could get silly and write a poem about how great it would be to go to lunch together. A day out with you in the sun will make my day complete. It's done. Or I can even generate a silly joke, and these jokes tend to be pretty bad, although they are not really too offensive. So that's good. So let's do the poem. It'll actually be a different one, and send that out. And then let's see, what am I missing? The final one is called Link on Furling. So this is a cool way to get people into your app. Maybe your app is, maybe you have no user training, nobody knows about your app at all, but they just take a URL from the web-based version of your app and paste it into a Teams message, right? And what will happen is, if the things are cooperating, I see what happened. Okay, the problem here is that I've run another app in the background. I'm going to try to spin this up locally. So Teams Toolkit is now going to run. So what happens is I ran it locally, and that it's kind of whichever one got registered last is the one that's going to work. So when it sees this URL with Northwind in the host name, it's actually going to try to trigger that message extension, and it actually has to be running locally for that to work. So so far I've been showing it off of my Azure deployment, which had a couple of advantages. One of which is there is a kind of an issue right now, just a fair warning, that sometimes these bots take a while to start up. If you've just created a brand new bot, it can take a minute or two or even 10 to get running. They're working on this, but just don't be distressed if you go to do the labs and you're running locally. You don't actually have to, if it seems like it can't connect, just wait a minute and there's a good chance that it will start connecting. Okay, so it's taking a second. My computer's chugging along here. And this is what it looks like when you deploy it into Teams. And then once that's running, we'll see if we can get that link on Furling to work. So again, the idea here is that users may not know about your app, but they probably know that there's some way for an app in general to have a URL. And I just want to send that URL to my friend, right? So when I paste it in, it should work this time. There we go. So it actually went and looked at the URL, pulled it apart, realized the supplier ID, and pulled out information and injected that automatically without the user having to do anything. This could be a full-blown adaptive card where the user could take action and things based on what that URL is. So you'll get to build all of this in the course of doing the labs. I'll just show real quick a couple of features of the code. So basically, almost every lab, what you're going to do is add a new compose extension here this is the Teams manifest, which basically tells Teams where everything is, right? And every time you do one of these labs, you're basically going to add some code to handle the request, and then you're going to add to the manifest a new feature, a new message extension, or they're called compose extensions in here. So here's the look up the supplier search. Here's the generate a message using AI. You've seen all 5 of these, right? And every one of these is going to come into my code only because Teams knows this information about the structure of the message extension. And don't worry about learning the details here, because when you do the labs, it'll walk you through every detail, every click. And then if I kind of come down here to my Teams bot, kind of what you're going to end up doing is building, notice that up here, every one of these message extensions has its own little JavaScript module. So you're going to add all of those to the main bot project, and then where the sort of hello world that you get from Teams Toolkit, just sort of everything's all in one piece of code, you're going to add a switch statement for every incoming request. So here we are getting the query from the search request, from one of the search message extensions, and we're going to dispatch that out to whichever ME message extension it is. Here somebody clicked on one of the items in the search. Here's somebody did the link on Furling, pasted in a link that matched, right? So every time there's an interaction, there's going to be one of these incoming requests, and then we're going to dispatch that out to the individual message extension code to actually go and call the web service and provide back the information. So I know I'm at time, so let me just sort of thank you for your attention and encourage you all to go check out these new labs at aka.ms/appcampnew, and send some feedback, leave questions and comments in the issues list or here in the chat or what have you. And I thank you, and we'll pass it back to Vesa. The next one will be for sure.
No, this was really, really good. A lot of exciting stuff, and a great teaser for what's available within the exercises. So thank you, Bob, on that. Awesome stuff.